So in keeping with our cozy Valentine's Day theme, we are going to make a salted chocolate caramel tart with honey and cardamom. And although it's not like, just throw it together, but bam, boom, it's not hard. So do not be intimidated if you're not, traditionally speaking, a tart maker. The best news yet is that we are making a delicious chocolate crust that doesn't need to be rolled. We're literally going to press it into a tart form like so. This is the only critical piece of equipment I'm going to tell you is a tart pan with a removable bottom. Unless you just want to cut into your tart pan, and then I can't guarantee you're going to get as nice slices coming out, but it will still be delicious. But get yourself that pan, and we'll make it a lot. That's the thing I use for my plum tart in the summer that is amazing. You'll use it for savory tomato and goat cheese tarts. You'll use it all the time. Invest in that pan. Okay, so first up is the chocolate crust. Now this is a tender, like almost butter cookie kind of sablé type of crust. Very like neutral on the sweetness because there's a luscious caramel layer happening inside. So you don't need a crust that's too sweet. And it comes together very quickly. We are going to do it in a food processor, but you can definitely do this by hand. And because it is not a rolled out crust, you don't even need to be that concerned about overworking and butter and blah, blah, blah. It's not meant to be like a flaky crust the way that an apple pie crust is. It's meant to be a pressed, buttery, cookie, tender style crust. Less to worry about. Okay, so I have here some cocoa powder, about a 1/4 cup, and about 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour. And the mix here is important because cocoa powder, well, very delicious, is also a little drying. So you don't want to do just pure cocoa powder. We're mixing the two together, and do your best to get it into your food processor with a pinch of salt, just to make sure the flavors balance, and about a teaspoon of cardamom. And you guys know she's my queen of spices, so I look to add cardamom wherever I can. But if you are not feeling quite like having spice with your chocolate and caramel, just leave it out, not a big deal. And we are just gonna pulse this together before we add our butter in. And it's kind of nice when you're working with the chocolate, you can pretty quickly see when it's been evenly distributed. Done. You need the sugar, which I forgot about. About a 1/4 cup. You could do a little bit more if you wanted to, but it really doesn't need much sweetness. I promise you, this will be delightful. 10 tablespoons of butter. This is an unsalted butter, which is why I did go ahead and add a bit more salt to the mix itself, but the only real important piece here is to cut it up into little, sheets or cubes, something small enough that it will distribute really quickly and evenly into your flour mix because we do not want to have to overwork this dough. This is the first 8 tablespoons, and you can see I'm just giving it a quick little chop. This is getting a little bit softer than I would ideally like. You want it not frozen, but not warm. And just give them a little bath in the lovely chocolatey sand. How nice. And then 2 more tablespoons to get yourself a total of 10. 1 and 2 more tablespoons. Just a tiny little teaspoon for good measure. Now the pulsing begins. The reason you don't just turn your food processor on and let it run is because you don't want to develop the gluten in the flour, which would give you a tougher, chewier crust, like bread. That's not what you're looking for. What you want is tender, buttery, very rich, but has a little snap to it kind of situation. Okay, so pulse. Just until you start to see that it is roughly this kind of wet sand look. It's okay if there are a couple pieces of slightly larger little bits of butter still left in that kind of pebbly form. That's totally fine. Now you want 2 egg yolks. And this is gonna add a lot of richness into this crust and help to bind with a little bit of liquid the flour elements. So go ahead and save your whites if you'd like. Make your, to balance out your caramel tart, you might want an egg white omelet tomorrow. And once you have your yolk right into your chocolate mix, just pulse these guys in. Okay, right there. You can see it hasn't totally come off the sides of the wall. There's a little bit of that kind of sandy look to it still, but if you gather a pinch and you can form it together into a nice looking ball like so, even better if you can snap it apart, you are in business. Yes, you are. Ooh. Ooh. Do the cardamom, guys. The cardamom, it adds just a little moment of mystery, a little unexpectedness, keeping the romance alive. All it takes is cardamom. Into a 9.5 or 10-inch tart form like I have here. And this is the fun part. All you need to do is sort of press this sandy mix down and around in an even layer. No real skill required. If you can make a sandcastle, you can make this tart. And you do kind of just work it along the shell so that you're not going to get too thick walls, because you want it tender and delightful and sturdy enough that it will hold the caramel inside, but not tough and not too thick that it's not a lovely balance. You need a balance of both. I always err on the side of a little too much dough, because there's nothing more irritating than like going to make your tart and not having enough to fully cover the base. And if you feel like it's coming up too far over the lip, like you can see on this side, you just kind of press it off. And you get a lovely flush edge. Okay, so once your form is fully pressed in like so, another thing I like to just quickly take a look at is make sure that the walls are roughly even around the whole perimeter. So you can see it's about a 1/2 inch thick all the way around the edge here. And that just guarantees we're gonna have a lovely and tender and professional looking tart. Okay, at this point, you can just survey your handiwork. And I'm gonna pop it onto a sheet tray in order to go into the oven, because when it comes out and it's hot, you don't wanna accidentally push on the removable base. Once you have your tart form on the sheet tray, go ahead and grab a fork and just gonna stab the base a few times here. Not too many, but you just wanna make sure that the steam has a way to release as it cooks. And that means you won't get those bubbles, those pockets at the bottom of the crust that can make it uneven. The other thing we're gonna do to really hold this tart form in place is to blind bake it using some pie weights. Now you can buy professional pie weights, you can use dry beans, or you can use dried lentils like I am today. And just one thing to note, once you use a bean or a lentil as a pie weight, you can't cook it. So be prepared to sacrifice whatever it is that you're making. 350 degrees, 15 minutes. And then we are going to remove the pie weights and let it toast another like 2 minutes, and that will give you a lovely crisp crust. Let's get to work making a seriously delicious silky caramel. The tart has been in about 15 minutes. I'm gonna pull it out, remove the lentils, and then let it continue to toast another, call it 2 minutes, just so it's nice and dry and crumbly and crispy. See, you can see how the edges have started to get dry out here, and the base is still a little bit wet down here, so that's why we're doing the next step without the lentils. Okay. Another 2 minutes and they will be good to go. In preparation for the tart being done, get a wire baking rack so it can cool completely. The tart has been in another 3 minutes. It is gorgeous, slightly dried on top, still lovely and tender, and can be lifted carefully, very carefully onto our rack just to start to cool. Lovely. Now, let's make the caramel. Okay, when it comes to caramel sauce, we're gonna actually do a really classic one, which starts with sugar and water, dissolving that sugar, slowly letting it caramelize and turn this wonderful amber color, and then we're gonna stir in some heavy cream and some butter to keep it really pretty extraordinary. This is a honey caramel, so at the end I will also add in some honey for that wonderful flavor, but the body of this mix is really a pretty classic recipe that once you figure it out, once you follow these, there's like two things you can really do to mess up caramel. And once you avoid those, you're in business. The only thing that you really need to think about when you're starting this caramel off with just water and granulated sugar is you don't want to mix. Why? Because you don't want sugar crystals to collect around the edge of your pan. If they do, they can burn, they can break your caramel. So it's kind of a fun time when you're actually just going to do it with your hands. So I added my granulated sugar and a 1/2 cup of water. And before I turn the heat on, I'm just going to go in with my hands and sort of stir this mix together just to form some wet sand feelings. I'm being careful to avoid bringing any water up the sides of the pan. But the beautiful part about doing this before you turn the heat on is that if anything did escape to the sides of the pan, just grab a pastry brush that you've gotten wet or this little wet paper towel and just run it along the edge of the pan to remove any sugar crystals, and you're in business. Get it over a medium flame. And now we're really not going to do very much. For like 9 or 10 minutes, we are going to sit here. Periodically, we will swirl the pan just to let those sugar crystals dissolve and start to melt and then start to caramelize without disturbing the surface of the liquid. And you'll see, once it turns caramel, that's when the fun part begins. Okay, so you can hear and see, actually, there's a little sizzling happening here at the edge of the pan. You just want to gently swirl the pan to move that sugar around and make sure nothing is burning at the base. And then since you can't go very far anyway, you also can take this moment to give your 6 tablespoons of butter a quick chop, just so it easily melts into your caramel when you're ready to add it, which will be after the sugar starts to caramelize and turn that gorgeous amber color. I go straight down the center and then just give myself a couple quick little cubes. This is quite soft, which is fine. It doesn't matter. It's actually okay because you don't want the cooking process to totally stop, because we're going to let the mixture with the heavy cream and the butter reduce ever so slightly, so you get a really thick golden elixir from your caramel. I'm just coming back here to swirl again. But resist the urge to go in too many times or too often. It really doesn't need much from you. The sugar at this point is completely dissolved. Now it is just bubbling away. It's kind of fun to watch. It smells like a candy shop in here. Come and see, our caramel has turned this pale blonde color. It is nice and thickened. I've been just periodically swirling it just to keep it going. And now it's time to start adding the good stuff. Okay, just come see quickly. You can tell the color, how much it's changed before I start adding in our butter and our heavy cream. So butter in first, 6 tablespoons chopped up, and come see it froth. Okay, beautiful. And you can put the heat, return to a medium. And now for half a cup of heavy cream. And don't be alarmed if it starts to froth and foam, that's fine. And at this point, we're just going to continue to let it simmer another 2 to 3 minutes before we add the honey, the vanilla, and the salt. And that'll just give it a second to thicken up and get really glossy and delicious for us. But already look at this color. And I'm just taking care to every once in a while scrape down if there's anything climbing up the sides of the pan. At this point, that's fine to do. I'm just really waiting to see that thickening. Okay, so right at this point is the liquid layer at which you would pull it out if you wanted to make caramel macchiatos, line the inside of your coffee cup with something delightful and delicious, a caramel sauce. We are going to take it a step thicker, continue cooking a couple more minutes, just so it really holds a nice form in our tart. It's getting there. Okay, so I killed the heat on our caramel, and you can see it's really lustrous and silky and beautiful. The way you're gonna tell it's thick enough that it will set up and be nice and sturdy as it cools in the fridge is if you go on the back of a spoon and you run your finger down through it, being careful because it is hot. It should hold pretty sturdy walls on either side. That is called nappe, and that is what you're looking for so that you know this caramel is going to have a nice sturdy form. A moment for the caramel. Okay, off the heat, we are now going to add a splash of vanilla extract. Nothing too precise here. That was probably a tablespoon. You can use less if you'd like. And I'm gonna add 3 big squirts of honey, and that's mainly for flavor, just to juice this up even more. Give it a quick stir. Okay, there's a reason you test. Come and see. A little sprinkling of the salt into that deliciously sweet sauce. Make sure it all gets incorporated. You need a little salt with your sweet. And now I'm gonna whisk it just another minute or 2 off the heat just to let it start to cool. Cool it completely in a solid 20 minutes, and then we're gonna pour it into our tart shell. Okay, so even just in the couple minutes that it's cooled, it's gotten even thicker. Check this out on a slightly larger spoon so you can really see. And it really holds the line that I just drew, which is great. Perfectly salted, really lovely. The texture on here is amazing. And just go ahead and pour it into your cooled tart mold. Leave nothing behind. This is the good stuff. And once you have sufficiently scraped every last drop out of your pan, bring your spoon over and just give it a little smooth, which it should do all on its own. To the fridge, an hour just to set up, and we'll make a quick chocolate ganache to go over top, but we are closing in on the finish line right now. Well, my friends, it is the final step before this salted chocolate and caramel tart is ready to be admired and then enjoyed. The caramel layer has been chilling in the fridge almost an hour. I'm going to get to work on the chocolate ganache layer, which is just a shiny, beautiful chocolate glaze that finishes the top of the tart, makes it look very professional, and obviously adds another layer of chocolate, which I felt was my duty in honor of Valentine's Day. So the way that we make a quick ganache is just to pick the, in my case, the dark chocolate of your choosing. You can use milk chocolate, you could use white chocolate, you could use a swirl. We could have done a like marbleized chocolate, which would have been gorgeous, but we're not. I'm gonna use 4 ounces of, this is a dark chocolate, extreme dark chocolate, 88% cocoa, but you use your favorite kind and just break it up. And then we are, in the meantime, going to heat a 1/2 cup of heavy cream just to simmering. Do not boil your cream. So over a medium heat, it will come up to simmer quite quickly, and we will use the heat of the cream to gently melt the chocolate. The fat from the cream will give you that really glossy, perfect finish. It will have, again, just like, you're gonna be like, I did that. And it's divine. Let's grab our tart out of the fridge where it has been chilling for the last hour. Oh yes, look at that caramel layer. Look at how that's set up. I mean, we don't even need anything else to go over this. This is beckoning, divine. But we have the chocolate. Oh, okay, see what I did here? There's that little tiny film coating right here at the surface. We don't want that. So watch carefully and do not do what I just did. But if you did what I just did, just go ahead and scoop it off. It's really not the end of the world. And all shall be forgiven when it is used to melt such delicious, glorious chocolate, like so. Let that hang out a couple minutes until the chocolate really gets soft and starts to melt. We will whisk it until it is smooth and silky. We will pour it over the tart. We will sprinkle our salt. We will put it back in the fridge 1 more hour, and then it will be complete. Okay, our chocolate has sat with the warmed heavy cream. Oh, come and see. Come and see. Oh, she's a beaut. So now as the cream cools and the chocolate melts, they blend together into this luxurious ganache layer. It's so chocolatey. And although I was saying that there would be a really beautiful element if we were to marble the white chocolate and milk and everything, the bitterness of this 88% dark chocolate is going to be so welcome as a contrast to the silky, super sweet caramel layer right beneath. Once all the chocolate has been melted, which it looks like we are in a smooth working order right here, then we can pour it over the surface of our tart. Get yourself a spatula. Give it a smooth. Actually, I'll be quiet and just let you enjoy this part. Now, if you're trying to tell someone you love them, a friend, a significant other, yourself, this is the way to do it, my friends. Let me tell you. Okay, little sprinkle of salt. I'm gonna go for flaky because I like that little crunch that it provides. Nothing too crazy, just a little scattering. Then back into our fridge. 1 more hour, and then we're good to go. Okay. Our tart has cooled with the layer of caramel, with the layer of chocolate, with that sprinkle of salt right on top. It has chilled in the fridge now another hour. I popped it right out of its mold, which is the beauty of this, which is why you need this. You need this in your life. And now we admire our handiwork. Valentine's Day dessert. It is sumptuous. It is indulgent. It is beautiful. It is layered. It's exciting, mysterious, enticing. It's just like us. Okay, can we eat it now? Yes. Let's cut into this bad boy, shall we? Well, that's a good sign of a chewy caramel underneath. Oh, yeah. That perfect chocolate crust, that dense layer of caramel, that chocolate ganache on top. It is salty, tender, that tiny note of cardamom coming through, our honey caramel, very delicate flavors, but together, quite the symphony. You said you wanted chocolate. You got chocolate. Happy Valentine's Day.